UFC Fight Night Paris, Gane versus Spivak takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card. And this one is a difficult card to predict. I'm going to start with the early prelim opener of Farid Basharat versus Kleydson Rodrigues. I'm going with Farid Basharat here. This is one of the easier ones on the card to call. Kleydson Rodrigues. I mean, we're talking about losses to CJ Vergara at flyweight. And I know normally that people say, you know, people coming up from a lower weight class, they're going to be a lot better. But I think this is one of those cases, especially at flyweight to bantamweight, where that's not always the case. You know what I'm saying? Like, he lost to CJ Vergara. He has a win over Shannon Ross. But who doesn't at this point? The dude's 13-7. He hasn't really been too impressive. He was okay on his Contender Series fight, but his opponent really didn't bring anything to the table. And in that CJ Vergara performance was kind of worrying as well. Maybe the weight cut has been holding him back this whole time, but Farid Basharat's win over Damon Blackshear has aged really, really well. Really, really well, because I think Damon Blackshear beat Mario Batista, and I think Mario Batista is very, very good level as a bantamweight, so I think this is a very good aged win for Farid Basharat. He's had a bunch of decent wins in his career as well. He's had some experience. He's now 10-0. This isn't like a 7-0, 6-0 guy coming into the UFC. He's had some experience. He's had amateur experience as well. If his brother is anything to go off of, he's going to probably go on to do similar amounts in terms of success in the bantamweight division. I think this is going to be a good win for him against Kleydson Rodrigues, and I reckon he'll be able to drown Kleydson in the second and third round. Maybe we'll see some difficulty for him in the first, and maybe Kleydson will pull off some kind of spinning back kick or wheel kick or flying knee or a head kick type situation, but I don't think I'm going to bet on that, so I'm going to have to go with Farid Basharat. I think if this doesn't end in the first 2 minutes, he's most likely going to be the better fighter for the majority of this fight, and that's what I'm siding with him on. So I'm going to go Farid Basharat, getting this one done, more well-rounded, and I can just see Kleydson slowing down in those later rounds. So I'll go 29-28 Farid based on the last two. We move on. Up the card, Ange Loosa versus Rhys Mckee. This is an interesting matchup, and I don't want to just go off of the fact that, you know, you see Ange Loosa in a fight and you think, well, you know, he did good against AJ Fletcher and he did good against Jack Della Maddalena as well, even though he lost every round nearly of that JDM fight. You know, people can say, oh, he did good in this, he did good in that against these other good opponents, but I'm not using MMA math. I'm going to go into MMA algebra here, and I kind of see style-wise Rhys Mckee as like Mounir Lazzez level, okay? And I don't think Mounir Lazzez is even that good. At one point, it was sort of presumed that he was, but in hindsight, you know, Gabriel Bonfim made really easy work of him. Wale Alves made really easy work of him as well. He's had some decent wins, and he has had some decent wins, but I think that Rhys Mckee can do similar things to Ange Loosa that Mounir Lazzez did, and it seems like Ange Loosa is good in fights. Again, this is MMA algebra, not MMA math. I'm trying to upgrade here with the way I think about fights. He does well when he's fighting these scrappy inside fighters like JDM and AJ Fletcher, because he's got really good inside work and he has good straight punches, but he's only got a 74-inch reach. So he's got good inside punches. He's a short dude, 5'10", 74-inch reach. And I feel like that sort of works against these inside pocket fighters because you can try and tally up some volume as the fight goes on with those straight punches as they're trying to get on the inside. But Mounir Lazzez, rangier striker, 6'1", 76 inches of reach, uses a lot of straight punches himself. And we saw in that fight that Ange Loosa was just sort of outworked across the distance and doesn't have power to put people away, in my opinion. Ange Loosa's one thing that costs him in fights, in my opinion, is his lack of power that he has. So I'm going to go with Rhys Mckee. You look at Mounir Lazzez, 6'1", 76 inches of reach. Then you go Rhys Mckee, 6'2", 78 inches of reach. And it's not his first time in the UFC. So it's not like he's making a fresh debut. He's going to have all those jitters. He's already been in the UFC. Lost to Alex Morono, who's quite a top-level welterweight, to be honest with you. Just outside the rankings, in my opinion, in terms of where he's at in the level of the welterweight division. And other than that, he fought Khamzat Chimaev. Since then, went to the regional scene, won 3 in a row, stayed active, had a great performance in his last one. And I think he's just going to improve enough to be that Mounir Lazzez level, to out straight punch Ange Loosa with a taller frame than Mounir Lazzez and also a bit more reach as well. So I'm going to go with Rhys Mckee, 29-28, close decision, outlands Ange Loosa and maybe has a bit of a sting advantage in his shots as well. We move on. Up the card, Nora Cornolle versus Joselyne Edwards. Now, this is an interesting one. Is this going to be an underdog that I'm picking? I haven't yet checked the odds. So I'm going to check them right now. Am I picking an underdog here is the question. I'm not. She's the favorite. Wow. Okay, yeah, I am going to go with Joselyne Edwards. I thought she was going to be the underdog because the majority of people are picking Cornolle on Tapology, and she has got a better looking record. But I've seen her regional fights. You know what I'm saying? I've done some research. There was a fight that she had, and she just doesn't look good. And I know that none of them look good, but this isn't like some prodigy fighter coming into the UFC. 34 years of age, 6-1. One of her fights that she had against, I think it was Sana Mandar, Sana Mandar. She was on bottom position in that fight at one point early in the first round. She threw an up kick and literally there was a double nip slip in that fight, okay? I really paid attention to that fight, okay? There was a double nip slip. The referee had to separate it and go, what's going on? Like, both are basically, tatas have fallen out here. I'm trying to avoid demonetization right now. The double nip slip happened. Both of them fell out, if you know what I'm saying. And the referee had to stop things. And when he resumed the action, he stood them both back up. And before that, she was on bottom position, losing that first round to an 0-0 really mediocre fighter. Or was that Priscilla de Souza? I think it might have been Priscilla de Souza. I can't even remember what opponent it was. I watched this earlier this week. I think it was Priscilla de Souza, actually. She was 12-10 at the time. She's now 12-12. And she was like on top position in that fight. They stood him up. And then she started getting beaten up and sort of out-muscled a bit. I think Joselyne Edwards has improved recently in her career. And I think she's improved. I think she has made some improvements. There's been some close decisions in her career. But she's beaten a lot of opponents. I know that before she lost to the Jessica Rose Clarks. But, you know, Carol Rosa's no shame in losing there. She's had a ton of experience against good fighters. If there's a time for her to finally get good, she's 27. She's got a 70-inch reach. She's got a massive frame advantage here. I think she's going to be a problem. Taller, rangier than Nora Cornolle. And I think she's going to be able to sting her at range because Nora Cornolle, from what I saw, didn't look good. Like, just really untechnical, relied on her physicality. And Joselyne Edwards is someone who has good physicality for the division. So I think that sort of takes away from what Nora Cornolle can do. So I'm going to go with Joselyne Edwards getting this one done by decision. We move on. Up the card, Zarah Fairn versus Jacqueiline Cavalcanti. Now, I've done a bit more research. I'm not going Zarah Fairn. Jacqueiline Cavalcanti actually looks all right as a fighter, you know what I mean? 5-1. She beat a great opponent in her last fight in LFA. 4-1 opponent. Like, it's really worrying to see. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know how good they're really going to be. You just never know how good they're really going to be. But she's young, up and coming, and Zarah Fairn, although she's tough and big and tricky in that way, I just don't think she's in any way good. You know what I'm saying? She's not good. She's not got technique. And I was maybe worried that the physicality of her could overpower 5-1 up-and-coming Jacqueiline Cavalcanti. But I reckon she'll just sort of survive a decision where she loses. She's been utterly dominated, and maybe Joselyne Nunes isn't maybe all we thought she was going to be. And she basically just survived a bit of a beating there as well. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Jacqueiline Cavalcanti winning this one in her debut. I reckon she'll pull it off. I don't really have much more to say about it than that. You never really know with these up-and-coming contenders in women's MMA if they're actually any good, but I'm going to side with her winning this one. She's actually a pretty decent prospect from what I've seen, so she's not some schmuck who's just terrible and just happens to have a good record like some of these other ones are. I'm going to go with Cavalcanti getting this one done, again by decision. I'm picking a lot of decisions so far. We move on. Up the card, Morgan Charriere versus Manolo Zecchini. I'm going to go with Morgan Charriere. Here's my take. Does he deserve to be in the UFC? No, he doesn't. You know what I mean? He's lost to people on the regional scene over and over and over again, and they're not in the UFC. Lost to Paul Hughes. He's not in the UFC. Lost to Jordan Vucenic. He's not in the UFC. Like, he's just lost a lot of fights to people that aren't in the UFC themselves. It's unfair, But this is I'm still coping about Hardwick. This is the Hardwick situation where certain fighters who have a bit more popularity just get in, and the people that beat them on the regional scene have to fight until they lose or get a monster on the Contender Series. He's been given a little bit of a layup here, in my opinion. This is the type of opponent that he can get a win against. Manolo Zecchini. Why is he signed to the UFC? He's on a 2-fight win streak. 2 fights ago, he fought a 12-12 opponent. 3 fights ago, he lost. 4-2 in his last 6. No crazy streak. But no, Hardwick has to go through the Contenders. I'm still coping about it. But Morgan Charriere is just there. With these great regional prospects in Europe, he's right there. You know what I'm saying? So he's not getting dominated by them, which is why I think he's going to win. He's got good grappling. He seems weirdly strong as well, which is something that I don't think a lot of these fighters, when they go up against him, expect. He's very strong at the hips, so he's got good takedown defense because of that. Even if he doesn't have the greatest of technique, he just seems like a really strong dude, and it's hard to take him down, you know what I mean? He's built quite heavy. You know what I'm saying? He's very heavy. He's got heavy hips, and people can't seem to take him down. So I think he's going to be a stand-up fight, and if it is, I think he has a massive power advantage. He has a strength of schedule advantage as well. He's beat some decent opponents in his last few, although one of them was a doctor stoppage. I'm going to have to go with Morgan Charriere. In the Paul Hughes fight, very, very close. Lost it 3-2 in a 5-rounder. Georgian Vucenic fight, very, very close. He just lost because he was getting basically outworked in the clinch in certain moments. Like, he was doing good, wrestling well, but Vucenic was like tapping him to the face in the clinch and kneeing him to the body and kneeing him to the thigh. And Charriere was just trying to hold him against the cage in certain moments. So he lost out there, but he's had that 5-round experience. And recently he's been fighting 3-rounders, which I like because it resets your mind for a 3-rounder. I don't like when these guys have 5-rounders and then they come into the UFC in their debut and they don't get started early enough. I'm going to go with Morgan Charriere. Finishing factor on his side, strength of schedule on his side. And although he has lost to better people on the regional scene that aren't in the UFC, he's barely lost him. So I'm going to go Morgan Charriere getting this one done by TKO. It's unfair to some of the other regional guys that he's even in. We move on. Yanis Ghemmouri versus Caolan Loughran, 8-0. Caolan Loughran is a little mini fridge of a man, okay? Now, this Yanis Ghemmouri guy is also very good, okay? He is a good fighter. He's had a good run recently. Not too many great wins in his career, but then again, you can say the same about Caolan, the Don Loughran. You know what I'm saying? The Don himself. He's a little tank. He's such a little tank of a dude. I don't mean to keep saying little. He is 5'6", you know what I'm saying? Didn't mean to say that. But he's a tank. Let's just say tank. He's just a tank. I'm not going to use the word little. He's a tank. Strong. Weirdly strong. And I feel like when I watch this guy fight, I know he fought some like pretty weak opponents to start his career. First 2 opponents, 0-31 Rhys Street and 0-39 Will Cairns. Okay? Terrible opponents. Rhys Street literally throws fights. I'm not trying to get him cancelled, but he literally does. And everyone knows that he does. It's like a joke. He changes his nickname. He had Rhys the Nightmare on Elm Street for one fight where he lost a few 5 fights in a row. Then for the next 5 fights in a row, he was Rhys Quality Street. Like, he just, I don't know. Then he had Rhys Sesame Street. He just changes his name, shows up to lose for a paycheck. Basically what he does. I'm going with Caolan Loughran. No, his recent opponents have been good wins. Luke Shanks, not really a joke. He's fought for belts on the regional scene. He's been a champion on the regional scene as well. He has decent wins on the regional scene. Dylan Hazan is a great fighter as well. 9-0, solid opponent, good fighter out of Italy. Wrestling background as well. And Caolan Loughran has the hands to put these guys away when he needs to. But in other fights that he's had, like against a 5-0 guy that he took on, Festus Ahuru, the Ghanaian fighter, prospect at the time, 5-0 at the time that he fought, who was coming off wins over a 6-2 and an 8-1 opponent, he just manhandled him. And it's a different strength, and you could see it on the guy's face. When Caolan Loughran got a hold of him, it was like, oh, I prepared for wrestling, but this guy's too strong. I'm not getting back up. You could see him like, on bottom position as Loughran was just fucking pounding away. Like, he's strong, very physically strong. I think he can take this where he wants it, and he's dangerous anywhere. And he's got a meathead on him as well, so I don't see him getting chinned. I'm going to side with Caolan Loughran. It's a dangerous opponent for him, but I am confident. There's just a different level of physicality that he brings to the game, especially at bantamweight. I feel like he'll squash Yanis. We'll see how it goes, though. Anything can happen. We move on. Up the card, Volkan Oezdemir versus Bogdan Guskov. Now, I know there's a vibe whenever Oezdemir fights, because of the shape of his incel head, there's a vibe that he's going to get chinned. There's always that vibe when Oezdemir fights. But let's be real, Krylov couldn't finish him early. You know what I'm saying? Krylov ain't finishing him early. Magomed Ankalaev's going to a decision with him. Yuri Prohaska got rocked by him in round 1 as well, and then round 2, Yuri manages to put him away. Goes to a decision win over Paul Craig. Split decision with Alexander Rakic. Like, there's these real close fights that he had. I thought Rakic beat him a bit clearer than that, but either way, there's these real close fights that he has with solid opponents. I think he's good enough to win, and I don't see him getting chinned. Now, Bogdan is Russian, so maybe there's something there. Dangerous, big dude, 6'3". I think he's a legit 6'3" as well. He seems like a tall dude for the division. They haven't got his reach listed, but he looks like he has some long arms from what I've seen. Very dangerous guy. But Oezdemir he ain't a schmuck. You know what I mean? And he's gotten better, and I think he's still improving technically. He sort of went from this guy who was looking for a first-round KO to a bit more of a technical fighter, and really made Krylov work for it. And Krylov, in my opinion, is one of the dark horses for the light heavyweight world championship in the future. So I reckon he's going to beat Bogdan. Maybe go through some rough moments in round 1, but I think as the fight goes on, he'll probably find a finish in late round 2. So I'm going to go Volkan Oezdemir, late second round TKO. We move on to the feature fight, Benoit Saint-Denis versus Thiago Moises. Now, I'm in a tricky situation here, okay? Because if I don't pick Benoit Saint-Denis, he's going to make a little montage about me on his Instagram page, exposing me for being wrong. So my hands are tied, okay? I have no choice but to pick him. I don't want to be bullied by his Instagram. I don't want to be bullied by him on Instagram for being wrong. I'm joking. My real take on it is this. He's proved me wrong. You know what I'm saying? In his debut, I was thinking, well, Zaleski dos Santos kind of past his prime right now. But at the end of the day, he looks for takedowns. Alesio's got really underrated takedown defense. I mean, Alesio's coming off wins right now, right? And he has some really underrated wins in his career. I'm going to go back and check him right now. But he's coming off wins over Benoit himself and then Abubakar Nurmagomedov, where he showed some good takedown defense. Split decision to Muslim Salikov. Beat Alexei Kunchenko, who was 20-1 at the time. Beat Vendramini, beat Sean Strickland, beat Curtis Millender. Alesio's underrated, and I didn't consider that when Benoit Saint-Denis first came onto the scene and lost to him quite brutally. But then he found his weight class, went back down to lightweight, started at welterweight on short notice in that fight, if you remember. And since then, smoking people. Nicolas Stolze, easy work, finishes him. Gabriel Miranda, easy work, finishes him. Nothing too much to look at there. Ismael Bonfim, the guy who was supposed to be the prodigy of the lightweight division, he smoked Bonfim. Threw kicks to his body, broke his forearms apart with kicks, took him down, choked him out in round 1. Very impressive performance, proved me wrong. Do I think he's going to be able to dominate Thiago Moises on the ground? I don't, which is why this is tricky. But I think he has the grappling necessary. Oh, he's going to put that on his Instagram. Watch him choke out Moises and then say, oh, Guru said I couldn't take him down and dominate him. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to be critical here, you know? God, pressure's on. On the feet, I think he's more game than Thiago Moises. From what we see from Thiago Moises on the feet, hesitance. If he doesn't get that takedown in fights, Joel Alvarez really whooped him bad, and you could see he felt the physical presence of Joel Alvarez in there and just sort of shelled up and took the beating. Decent performance against Makhachev, though, can't lie about that. But then there's like these other performances that he has where he just seems like he's not pulling the trigger on the feet. And in the Bobby Green fight, I thought he clearly lost that fight. I thought Bobby Green got robbed quite blatantly there. And I think Benoit's just a bit more dangerous than him on the feet. So I think in the case that they're grappling nullifies each other and they end up in a stand-up fight, the finishing potential for Benoit Saint-Denis on the feet is way higher than it is for Thiago Moises. So I can actually see Benoit Saint-Denis getting a bit of a stalemate fight going on and then maybe scoring a second round KO over Thiago Moises. So I'm going to go with Benoit Saint-Denis, or maybe he rocks Moises and then gets him down and goes for the sub. Who knows? We move on up the card. Manon Fiorot versus Rose Namajunas. I'm going with Manon Fiorot. And there's more to it than just a style matchup, but I'll talk about the style matchup a little bit here as well. Manon Fiorot, the beast, okay? 33 years of age, 10-1, 5'7", 66 inches of reach. Need I list more random stats? You know what I'm saying? No, but she's good. Caitlin Chookagian win. Jennifer Maia win. Mayra Bueno Silva win. The one who just beat Holly Holm and is on the sauce, allegedly now. Beat Tabitha Ricci. Finished her. You know what I mean? Like, these are wins over people that have gone on to do very good. Chookagian's not done much since that loss, but the other ones are really good. You know what I mean? And there's a lower level of competition that she's smoking. Her stand-up is dangerous. And my problem with Rose is, when Joanna moved up to flyweight, there was a problem with the physicality. And I think Manon Fiorot is a little bit too strong. I do not see Rose getting her down to the ground. Do not see that whatsoever. And I just don't think Rose's head's in the game anymore. Honest opinion. That's sort of what I'm going off of here, right? Like, technically you can say, oh, but she beat Zhang. Different version of Zhang, in my opinion, before she trained with Cejudo and exponentially got better. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think her head's in the game. It just seems like she's mentally checked out of the game, and then she's taken a long time off. Lost to Gillian Robertson in a grappling match. She's been out for a year and 4 months. The Carla Esparza fight is maybe the biggest red flag we have ever seen in a fighter's career ever in UFC history. The fact that she was in a title fight against Carla Esparza and chose to not do anything and watch that fight slip away from her, and then she shows up to fight Gillian Robertson in a grappling match and loses and seems okay with it and was just like, you know, I just wanted to see where my mind was at and get some answers about where I was at. That sounds like she was like about to retire from the sport after that Gillian Robertson matchup, and she's moving up to flyweight to sort of like trick her mind into being excited about the game again. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, maybe I'm just bored of it at strawweight, and if I move up to flyweight, it'll be fun again. I don't see this going well for her. I think there's a big physicality difference, and I think that this is going to be a pretty bad beating from Manon Fiorot. I'm going to go with Manon Fiorot by TKO. You know what? I'll say with just a flurry of punches in round 1, and Rose is just covering up against the cage. I don't think she has the physicality to get respect from Fiorot in this fight. I think it's going to be Fiorot's one-sided win. I really do. Manon Fiorot, TKO, is my prediction. I think Rose is checked out of the game. And in prime Rose, I would probably consider a pick here. But I just don't think she's the same fighter anymore. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Ciryl Gane versus Serghei Spivak. He's a great fighter. I'd love to fight him again. Ciryl Gane. I'm picking Ciryl Gane. I got a feeling. I can't hide the feelings anymore. That's what I've been going off of sometimes in these last fights. I'm going off of the hunches. Like, I don't want to dive too deep into, well, Spivak out-grappled him and Gane got out-grappled by him. It don't always work like that, man. It just really don't. Like, you can't say, well, Spivak out-grappled someone and look what John Jones did. Like, no, it's John Jones. I know Ngannou took down Gane, but he wasn't training for grappling, and he even said in the build-up to some of those fights that he don't train grappling, and he even took the Jones fight on 6 weeks' notice, so it's not like his grappling was down at all there either. Since then, we've been seeing a lot of time to hit the grappling hard from Ciryl Gane, and he strikes me as the type of fighter who's going to improve if he puts his mind to it. So I think with this time off, to really improve his grappling, and by the way, he took no damage against John Jones, and it was a massive fight feel. And he's already fought in front of the Paris crowd. Spivak doesn't yet have that big crowd experience. He had that one fight against Greg Hardy, where a lot of people were there for it. But the Augusto Sakai fight, you know what I'm saying? It was in the Apex. The Derek Lewis fight, am I wrong, or was this in the Apex as well? It was in the Apex. And I'm looking at some of the other fights. The Aspinall fight was in the Apex. The Alexei Olenek fight, I believe, was also in the Apex as well. This dude doesn't have big crowd experience. The fight on the Blades card that he had against Jared Vandeera was in the Apex. And then you even go to his fight against Carlos Felipe before that. That was on Fight Island in Abu Dhabi. Didn't have a crowd. It was one of the first fight cards in Abu Dhabi. I think he's going to crumble. I think he'll crumble here. And I think Gane will be able to chew up the legs, teep the body, throw some kicks out there, stick something in the face of Spivak, and make him crowd up a little bit and huddle away. Because we see when Spivak is under fire, he does shy away from the fight. And his stand-up is atrocious. It really is atrocious. We're talking about a guy who couldn't look good on the feet against old man Alexei Oleinik when Oleinik was gassed out. And they ended up going to a really close fight on the ground. I know he took down Derek Lewis, but Lewis has zero footwork and it was in the smaller cage in the Apex. I think you give Gane the space to move and stick something in the face of Spivak with jabs and teeps to the body and low kicks at range and move well. I think Spivak's grappling, let me know if I'm wrong from what I've seen, from what I've been watching, all of Spivak's successful grappling have not come from single legs and double legs. And I think he's going to have to shoot him to get a hold of Ciryl Gane. This is Aljo versus O'Malley. In hindsight, when you look back at Aljo's grappling, his success has come from sustained clinch-based grappling scenarios. That's what happened against Cejudo. They were in the clinch. Cejudo was taking him down. They ended up in a long grappling exchange, and then Aljo would end up on top. You see it quite a bit in other fights with Aljo as well. He's in the clinch. He's muscling guys around. You saw it against Sandhagen. But his single legs and double legs weren't there against O'Malley. So I see a bit of that in this matchup, right? A bit of an O'Malley-Aljo situation where because of the movement of Gane and the space control that he can give, you're going to have to shoot a single leg or a double leg. And Spivak just doesn't do that well. All of his grappling comes from the clinch. And I think Gane's got the space in the bigger octagon to make something happen when that does happen. You know what I mean? And to avoid that situation pretty well. And this is going to be the first time Spivak's in front of a crowd. And it's the European crowd. The best crowd in combat sports. Singapore was up there recently, but no one beats European crowds when there's a European fighting in the main event. You know what I'm saying? So I think they're going to be going crazy in that main event. Atmosphere is going to be wild. I think Gane's going to rise to the occasion. All of his grappling training is going to work off. And I think his distance control is going to make Spivak not get the takedowns that he wants in the clinch, in the sweeps, in the trips. Instead, he's going to be trying to look for single legs and double legs. And I think he's going to fail. I'm going Ciryl Gane, first or second round TKO. That's what I'm going to go with. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.